Yeah, I keep forgetting that.
We just saved the whole podcast.
Yeah, keep reminding me about that because I keep forgetting about it. They're so not noticeable to me.
Cool, man. Nick.
Mike.
How are you?
Well,
awesome.
Bro.
Good to hear. Colin, how are you?
Let's get it all up, okay? Let's get all the energy up.
All right, none of the pleasantries.
Okay.
Yo, bro. Bro, what up, bro?
No, I was gonna say just a quick little intro. This is Nick Ward. I'm here myself. I'm Colin Cummings, and this is Grandmaster Psychedelic Johnson.
Here I am at Unreal Johnson. You're listening to.
I have coined this nickname myself for Michael.
Okay.
I think it's great.
It's fine
because it's Michael. It's psychedelic.
If you hadn't told me that you had coined it, I was like, oh man, this guy must be from high school. Like that just followed him
right
for decades.
That's
everybody.
No,
knows
just
him.
from like last episode, basically. It's just like, yo, I had a dream, and this is it now. I just finished changing all my social media handles to Unreal Johnson, so I'm not changing them again. I'm just not going to do that.
Don't be like.
But no, we can use Psychedelic in the confines of this podcast. AKA.
Thank you. See, that's compromise. See, that's partnership.
You guys have a long and beautiful future together with that kind of a give and take.
But I always like to represent people properly, and really like let them say what they are. So, like, what would you call yourself?
I mean, what would I call myself? I would call myself a free spirit, someone that's here to learn and appreciate and understand things. I'm just interested in everything, and so I do feel like from a kind of a more wider lens, I feel like I'm here on this planet to just learn and to have great conversations and meet people and understand myself and understand people and stuff.
So like you're like in the coaching field per se.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay. So that professional realm, I would say it's based on helping people be responsible and helping people take accountability and helping people really use their word as power and be able to create with their words. And in that context, for the last 5 years, it's really been about personal development work in terms of holistic coaching and the helping people create a life that's worth living, helping people create a self-care journey that really supports that. And this interestingly enough, this past year, I realized like I actually kind of got tired of coaching a little bit. I kind of started to feel like, I want to help people and follow their journeys, but I have other things I want to be doing. And so I make the choice to only have one client this year. And we only meet once a month, and we text and stuff between the sessions. And what that's really allowed me to do is focus on bringing the holistic and the empowered message to the business world, and to work with specifically in the cannabis and the tech space, but working with companies that are wanting to sell authentic products and tell authentic stories. And so it's using a lot of the work that I've been doing up until now around self-care, making self-care like the primary focus of scaling a company, for example. Yeah. So it's all part of it, but more, focusing more on the business stuff and really coaching my own team, if you will, like using my coaching skills and abilities to help build, grow a team for a company.
Cool. I like that you took advantage of that, explaining who you are a little bit. Some people just don't take advantage at all. But give us like 2 words.
I'm a human.
Huh?
I'm a human.
Right.
That's usually what we get.
They'll get that, or just like, or like just what they are, like just a basic lens of it. But I like that you just delved in there. Thanks. Because I've been wondering. Because I've been like watching you on social media and everything. I like your content, so
thank you.
So thank you for that.
And you're also a comedian? We've been having a lot of comedians.
No. This is. I'm
just wondering.
This is from the other side of my circle.
It's okay.
Circle.
It's funny you ask that. Which I don't know if there's a Ed Norton movie where they do a joke about funny you should say that, but anyway, that's
for sure
a whole other thing. But I actually do want to be in comedy. But I've gone up on stage once.
Okay.
And I have a little joke folder, and I have little things that I'm writing down.
What
and,
the fuck?
and so it's not something that I'm actually actively doing, but it's there, and I think this year it's going to come out a bit more.
Cool.
So,
Okay, so
Very cool.
I apologize. Yes, he is a comedian.
He's
Sorry.
a comedian. Okay. If you're writing jokes in a book, you're definitely a comedian.
Yeah, you're getting there. Definitely. Yeah, we've had a lot of comedians on basically everybody, I think.
Almost everybody.
And in my head, I was like, finally, Nick is going to be the one that's
we had
not interested
Vesa.
in comedy at all.
Right.
Vesa was one, and that was it.
Damn.
Yeah, right? And now we got Nick. Well, you know what? Should take you to open mic.
Yeah, it's time. What I think is most interesting is that when I'm working with people one-on-one or in a business setting, humor really brings a lot to it, and so that it just seems natural for me to infuse more comedy into what I'm doing in my life, because I love it. Like, I'm a huge fan, and so it also makes sense for me to try and be a little bit more comedic purposefully as well.
Yeah.
Right. That always helps with building rapport.
Yeah.
And, making the sale.
Totally.
Totally. That charisma.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
So, Nick, we're here to talk about mushrooms.
Yes.
And I'm very curious. When was the first time you did mushrooms?
I was 18 years old. I was at a party at my friend's birthday party, and we were actually, that's not the first time I tried it, but that's the first time it had an impact. The first time I tried it was a few months earlier. I tried to buy some weed from my local high school weed dealer, and he was like, bro, I only got mushrooms. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll try that. And
Classic.
And so I ate it in a bologna sandwich, and I think I just fell asleep. I didn't really feel anything.
So it wasn't meaningful.
It wasn't so much. But then a few months later, we were at a friend's birthday, and there was a big bag of mushrooms and some tea that was made, and Daft Punk playing Around the World on vinyl in the basement, and then kind of that was the first time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, or tell me more about your first meaningful one, actually. Rather.
Well, yeah, it was. I had been drinking and smoking weed, and I think that was it. So I had alcohol, and I had weed, and then someone gave me this mushrooms, and of course, typically I was like, how much do I take? It's like a handful out of a bag, and I have no idea what dose or anything it was.
Right.
All I know was a few hours later, I was like, I'd vomited, obviously.
Bring that mic in closer
Yeah.
to you.
Cool, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd vomited, and I felt really great afterwards, and this real psychedelic experience started happening. And again, we were listening to the music, and it was on vinyl, and there was lights and sounds, and it was just like it was an experience of like, I've experienced something. Like, this is different.
Okay.
This is different.
I think I understand what you mean. Like, my first time was similar. Like, it was very overwhelming. It was like a download of like just too much information, and I remember being frustrated at times, noticing beauty at other times, but just like a big download of like information. You're like, this is not like weed or not like other stuff. So.
Yeah.
So.
Pulling a stronger pull in different directions. And I found, like getting pulled into the darker side, it was faster and easier and more scary. And then also getting pulled into the more expansive and the lighter side of things was happening at the same time. So yeah, it was a stronger feeling than I'd had just from smoking cannabis, for example.
So you say your general takeaway from that first time was just like, this is different.
This is different. Yeah, this is different, and this is cool. Like, I like this. I like the way that I feel with the music. I like the way that the music sounds with this experience. So yeah.
Right on. I remember listening to like Dark Side of the Moon in full, Pink Floyd, for my first and second time on repeat or something, and that's like a hell of a journey because it's like really upbeat, and then there's some down moments, and it's kind of freaky, and it makes you go through this internal journey that you wouldn't otherwise expect.
And your third and fourth and fifth. Every single time I've ever done it with them, that's what comes on.
Eventually, yeah.
And it's the best.
Good memories.
Have you ever done the Dark Side of Oz thing?
Yeah, I've done the Dark Side of Oz. Yeah.
Oh, where you play the movie? And
yeah, you play it with the movie. That's fun.
Does
It's
it
fun
work?
for the first half, and then at the end it gets boring.
Is it working?
It works.
Like,
yeah, it's like it works enough that like you're like.
But whenever it gets by the time you finish the album, the movie's like half over.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So it doesn't actually go.
You're
through the
supposed to play the album again,
right?
But the second play isn't as exciting.
Gotcha.
I would say.
It's not as like. Boom.
But really, the first like bunch of scenes, it's really like the first half of the album that really gets you, and then it kind of dithers off. But I haven't done it in a long time, so I don't even really remember. But
Jeez.
I just remember being disappointed by the end of it, but it being enjoyable at parts.
Half of an album sunk up is crazy. That's amazing.
Right. If it,
The first couple of like scenes, you're just like, what?
Wow.
So let's go down that road then. Like you did mushrooms, you felt like it did something different. It was new and different. And what sort of like did you look into it after that? Did you think about it more after that? Like what led you to your the next time doing it after that?
Well,
what was that?
There was about a decade in between that experience, and well, that's not true. Maybe like I guess probably in my mid 20s, I started playing rugby with this team in Montreal, and what happened was they always had mushrooms around, and it was like a party drug. So It was like everyone would get drunk, and then the mushrooms would come out, and then the laughter would happen, and then we'd be awake all night, and like, oh my god! And so that was my experience there was like, wow, this is fun. This is the funnest thing ever. Like, wow, this is amazing. Like, that was at a time where some of my circle was starting to try like amphetamines and cocaine and things like that. So it was like, all of a sudden there was like this organic thing that had similar results without some of the more hangover kind of disastrous things. So all of a sudden mushrooms became our our party drug, like with alcohol, and kind of pushed them together. And it was really interesting because we, going back to sort of like the dark and the light, there would be times where I'd be like really afraid because we're at a bar and it's nighttime and I'm eating mushrooms and there's people and sounds and stuff. And so there would be a lot more like kind of like edge to it, risk feeling of it, like I'm pushing my own edge, with that kind of that way to consume and to go with it,
like a little bit of paranoia, or
some paranoia, like just some dark sadness, right? Like because like mushrooms would bring up what I'm feeling, right, or give me a clue into how things are, but I didn't know that that's what was happening at that time. I just would go from one experience to the other and have like crazy highs and crazy lows, and some paranoia, some fear, like, or everyone's looking at me. And I remember one time my friend and I took the mushrooms. We didn't drink enough first, so we just all we were feeling was the mushrooms at this bar we were sitting at, and we were just like so uncomfortable and so weirded out after like 30 minutes. We had planned for this big night out. We were going to be out all night, and 30 minutes later we were back at the apartment going like, oh, okay, let's just like watch some movies or something.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, mushrooms will do that to you for sure.
I was gonna ask, were you eating them in these experiences, or are you?
Yeah, the first one I tried the tea at that party when I was in high school, and it didn't really do anything. I didn't really feel anything happening, and then so I was eating it, and then since then I was like, oh, tea doesn't work for me. So now, generally even to today, I don't really put it into tea, but I eat it, chew it.
Wow.
Yeah.
There we go. A lot of chewers, man.
A lot of chewers. Yeah, we usually make tea.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just doesn't last as long, and it comes on a little faster.
Yeah.
So, and it's easier to take down.
Yeah.
So
honey.
I can
Put some
never
honey in it.
I can never just munch a bag of mushrooms. It's a little hard for me.
We should try it
One day.
Test our metal.
I've definitely tried it more than once.
Well,
so.
yeah, but like that much though.
No, I can't. No, I'd have to put it on a pizza. Like I've done it on a pizza, peanut butter sandwich.
Like, can you imagine eating the 7?
Like but did it, when itself,
the food doesn't that take the effect away, or
but I go into it with an empty stomach.
You go in, okay.
So everything's kind of mixed together, and it works out. I've definitely had like some of my stronger trips that way.
Really?
By eating it, yeah. Like I ate like 7 or 8 grams in a peanut butter sandwich after like a full day of just fasting, and had a very wild night. Like I felt like my hand melting through my skull and my face, and like looked at myself in the mirror, like didn't recognize myself at all. Like the wallpaper on my it turned into like a forest with gnomes. It was like green foresty wallpaper, so like it turned into this whole thing.
That's amazing. I've never had anything like that.
It was just such a overwhelming night, and I started getting high like immediately. It was within like I'd say 10 or 15 minutes
with eating.
I was like telling the door to shut up, and my friends are like, "What is going on with you right now?" And it took them like an hour to get high, so they're just like upset with me.
Right.
Like, you bastard. Why are you high?
Mike's being silly. But that's nuts. That's nuts. Just eating them like that.
So you said you've done them mostly like in party settings, like as a party drug. But have you ever kind of gone the other way and gone internal and done them on your own?
That's the part. The shitty part about mushrooms for me now is that they're no longer in any way, shape, or form a party drug. The minute that I connect with the plant or the medicine, I'm like, I want to go as far away from people as I can right now because I need to listen to what this message is that I'm going to be getting, and I really find that and it's so interesting because the psychedelic side of mushrooms is what was the gateway drug for me to get into other types of mushrooms and medicinal stuff and really understand, like, I mean, at a very surface level, but at least for my own body, understand that this has a powerful impact on me. And so that was sort of like the gap between where I am now and that party drug was when I would, sort of be hanging out with more like quote unquote conscious people or people that wanted to explore plant medicine from a mindful place and in setting intentions. And I learned, about all of that kind of setting stuff that's now pretty commonly known, or maybe not, but it certainly was something that helped me get there. And then I remember being at a festival and I took some mushrooms, and all I wanted to do was lie down on a blanket and just like, everyone was like around me and doing things and dancing and everything, and I just had no interest in engaging with it at all. I just was like, I think that I just got told to delete Facebook, but I'm not sure if that's true. Also, maybe and so I would get these like downloads about what I could do for my health and how I could be a healthier person, and,
of course,
and that sort of that. So I went through the whole range really from of party drug to mindfully consuming it.
Cool. That's really exciting.
Jeez.
How long have you been mindful about it?
I would say the last 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And before that, I would only, I wouldn't have any more than maybe 3 or 4 trips a year.
Okay.
But since then, I've taken on more, and I prefer to microdose it, to be honest. I did a couple of cycles about 2 years ago where I went for about 6 weeks where I was microdosing almost every day or taking a week off here and there. But that I don't know, it's something about the medicine. I just feel like it's not something that I need to have all the time, and it's not something that would be good for me to have all the time.
Right.
But when it's needed, or when I know I need it, or when I know it would help me kind of understand something, that's when I'll tend to go back.
Right. That makes sense. Same with me. I don't try to force trips or plan them. It just generally once a year when the time is right. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's twice a year. It's the type of thing you'd like to do more, but but it's not calling me.
Do you find after your trips of a larger dose, do you find any sort of side effects of terms of cognitive ability the next couple of days or anything like that?
Shit, man. I feel just more
shit, man.
I feel more open. I feel like immediately after the next day, you kind of want to just reflect and take in what you just learned, sort of. But the following days after that, I just sort of feel more open, more clear, just cleansed almost, I would say. And I'm usually excited to work on my projects or something like that. I get really motivated and get into the zone after my trips. And they say it lasts. So for example, people with PTSD or facing death, they have these studies where they give them hero doses of magic mushrooms, and then they're effectively cured right afterwards. But they interview these people a year later, and they're still sitting there I haven't been taking my old meds, I haven't taken more mushrooms, and I'm still really freaking happy. Whoa. Mm-hmm. And their families are interviewed, and their families are like, what the fuck did you do to this person? They're a completely different human being. It's what's going on. So one dose of magic mushrooms can have long-lasting effects on someone before they have to re-up, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I think that's sort of what we're experiencing as well. So I'll throw that question back at you. How do you feel in the?
Have you done larger doses?
Yeah, not super large doses. Probably for me, what I consider like a God dose for me would be like 3 to 5 grams.
Okay.
That's just, I've just noticed like, beyond that, like it doesn't even, I would say like I'm so gone at that point that more is not helpful to the experience. But
have you ever done it?
Yeah, I took some really strong, I don't know how like the weight of it, but I definitely have taken, big handfuls and things like that. And so I don't really know, but
every time I hear someone say that, I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
are
we
you
never
talking about? Like a handful. What are you saying to me right now?
Oh my God.
So I do feel though, after a big trip though, to answer your question, which was my question, I do feel like I do feel a little bit hungover. Like I feel like I want a lot of salt, and I do feel like my brain is kind of like wants some nourishment, or it's like it's been pushed sort of to its edge of something, and it kind of it's almost like a like in an alcohol hangover. You want certain foods, like, oh, I want fries and pizza and wings or whatever to cure this hangover. And I feel like I have similar things with mushrooms, where it's a different type of foods, but I definitely don't feel like after a big trip I'm like, ooh, let's get to work, let's get productive. I'm pretty out of it for a couple of days as I'm like trying to like figure everything out. And I definitely do notice a little bit of a dip of sadness at times as well, that I do find after most psychedelics or recreational medicines. I do find myself a couple of days later going like, well, okay, just trying to put everything back together.
It's funny you say you crave those foods, because like I know a lot of energy healers after they go through like some stuff with people and they're releasing stuff, that's exactly what they say. They like start turning to a lot of fast food and stuff because it's just something that tends to happen. I noticed with myself, I was actually talking to a healer and they were telling me about my abilities, and they're like, that's the reason why you keep gorging on these things, because you keep on taking on people's problems, and that's how you're releasing it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So you got to think about that, because I know you're like connected in that sense.
Yeah, no, I do.
Like empathic, I mean.
It's I do energy healing work on myself and with other people from sometimes. So yeah, definitely there's a connection there with regards to the nutrition side. When when I'm doing a lot of energy work, when I'm doing Reiki sessions with people, if I there's too much output going on, if I'm not being really careful about my own self-care, then I have that kind of crash response to it. But again, even similar to mushrooms, if I go in with like a plan of how I'm going to be nutrition wise, you've been leading up to it the week before, and that kind of stuff, if I'm really mindful about it, that impact is less.
True.
Yeah, I find I want nourishment too afterwards, but like it's usually because I fasted, and I'll go at like a big bowl of oatmeal or something, and like that'll usually make me feel better.
I don't get anything like that. I don't get hungry. I don't feel like nourishment after a trip. I feel like I just have to do all the things that I thought of. But that's also because unlike you guys, I don't plan. I force the trips, and I plan them. Like I plan it out, and like I have an itinerary of what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I try to do that, and then it usually turns into like me canceling many trips until like I feel like ready to actually do it.
Yeah, no,
I'm doing it Monday, and then like Monday comes like
let's do it. Well, see, I don't do the whole Monday thing. Like you already know, the second that they're around, I'm doing them. It's like, if it's Tuesday, then I guess Wednesday, that's when it's happening. It's like that kind of thing, and then I just kind of set up this whole itinerary, and my intentions are very set already, because it's like stuff that I already want to improve in my life.
Is it fun? Do you have fun on your trips, or is it more like work, inner work? I
have more fun than ever improving myself. Like if I feel like I'm improving, then I feel absolutely ecstatic. Like I hate reading, but like the only time that I've eaten mushrooms, I read for like 4 hours. Wow. And it was all about like dimensions and quantum physics. Like it was like, I was retaining it. It was the weirdest thing ever. But like I always just plan. It's like a course load I have when I take a trip.
Nice.
It's fun. And the times that I haven't have been like, they get chaotic, very chaotic.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I definitely have had fun on my trips, because things are really beautiful, or like you see like everything's magnified, your vision's like improved almost. You're like, look how pretty this flower is, or like whatever. So there's some like really like beautiful moments, but like I definitely don't do a trip with the intention of having fun. It's usually like working. It's not supposed to be a fun thing. It's usually like there's challenging moments, there's scary like moments, there's beautiful and powerful moments, but yeah, it's kind of all, it's just like a whole journey really.
Yeah,
a general trip.
Yeah, I'm starting to find all those things fun. Like I was telling you the
it's
other
fun
day.
Yeah, like you look forward to that journey because you know what to expect, but when you've never done it before, that's when you start to question something like that.
Well, I was telling you about like when I had that breakdown when I was thinking about my dad the other day, and you're like, oh no, but like for me it was like the best thing ever. Like I had like a great time like thinking about him and like reconcile, because he's passed away already, so reconciling that and everything. So it's just I don't know, I have fun improving myself. Like if I know that's the path, it's like becoming a better person is like always a fun thing for me, but I know it's never always enjoyable.
Yeah, in the moment it's a challenging thing, but maybe fun's not the right word.
What about you? Because I know you must have had like a lot of different kind of journeys.
Yeah, I
just because with fatherhood and everything like that. It's like,
in terms of the, yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that, yeah, I resonate with that a lot, that doing things for my benefit, for my health, or doing things for just to better understand is fun. There's a lot of fun to that. But there's not that kind of like, I don't know, like when because I came from such a strong like party background. When it comes to mushrooms like that, it was so much fun. Like I had so much fun. We laughed all the time and laughed and all these things that I thought were what mushrooms were all about.
Right. We used to set up stations. It's like, okay, we have this visual thing here, this TV thing here. Yeah. The smoke thing here. Yeah.
It's like, and everything is about like laughter and joy and fun and things like that. Right. And then, but I went to I did a ceremony with an overnight ceremony. Probably shouldn't say where, cause it's a establishment. Anyway, they invited everybody in and they said, we have 5 people that you could, there are 5 spots that are available. There was like a private ceremony event kind of thing. And it wasn't really led by anybody, but there was a few people that took the role on as space holders. And they were like, okay, we're going to make sure everyone's safe. We're going to make sure everything is good. We're going to help people who need challenges. We've got different things set up, right? So I went and I decided to go for a good dose. I think it was about 3 grams, which for me was like a really strong amount. And there was a group they'd set up a station, a social setting for people to come and hang out and socialize and chit chat and laugh and stuff. And so that was going on, and I had my little pod area, and I remember feeling like, oh, I should be over there with the people having fun, because that's what you do, right? That's, like I'd taken enough. I was happy and high and whatever. But then, there's just this feeling. It was just like, no, like that's not for you anymore. Like that socializing is one thing, but this is you're going to be taught something here. So go back and lie down and, dissociate from time and space for a while.
Cool. That's cool. So you're really like receiving messages. Are these like clear speaking messages, or are you like just feeling things out?
It's a feeling. I tend to connect to extrasensory information through feeling it, versus seeing it or hearing it. And it's like I remember one of the clear messages that I got from the medicine once was, try our friends. Try the other things, the other mushrooms that are out there that are not psychedelic. You may find they will be very helpful for your what you're trying to understand or uncover right now. And so that was one. Yeah, after like the cycle of microdosing I did a couple of years ago, that was like the message. It was like, hey, go check things out. So I started trying out like lion's mane and cordyceps and other chaga and things like that, and just seeing like how I actually felt like with these other mushrooms, I made a tea once for an event that I put on, and it was a planning for creative people. So it was like how to teach people who are creative and artistic actually how to plan things out and create structure. So we did we made a whole pot of mushroom tea with no psilocybin, just other types of mushroom and cacao and things like that. And what people found was they said that they felt as open and as connected as they would have if they were taking psilocybin. They had the ability, the cognition, and all of those things that were there, but there wasn't any of that total reality bending thing going on. So it was like similar effects, similar impact, just slightly altered or different than they'd ever experienced. And I noticed the same thing as well when I.
Interesting. Would you put in that concoction?
So there was lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga. So it was like a chaga based thing, and so it was a chaga based, and then we threw in those mushrooms and some maple syrup and a couple of other spices and things like that.
I could tell you what's making people feel like that. It's the cacao. If you put cacao in it and it's a chaga base,
yeah,
I know for myself when I would steep chaga and drink it, it felt like psilocybin. Like it felt like very medicine-like.
Interesting.
Like, but like you said, none of the crazy effects, but I would feel like I just like enlightened myself.
Yeah.
Like, so to speak. Like chaga is like amazing. And that with cacao, because cacao is like intense.
Yeah.
It can be intense.
Yeah, totally.
Because like I've been at like a chocolate groove thing and like,
yeah,
like I'm not dancing with you guys. And when I drink this drink, I'm like, I think I got just a little bit. Yeah. It's weird, man. It's wild. That's amazing that you did that for everybody.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've been into the medicinal mushrooms more over the last couple of years. Are you familiar with like Paul Stamets?
No.
That's very surprising. Where do I begin? Paul Stamets is a mycologist. He basically like has a crazy story where he had a debilitating stutter for the first like 19 years of his life, and he did a hero dose of magic mushrooms. And after that night, he never stuttered again. He like had a mantra, like mantra. He's just like, "You will stop stuttering. You will stop." He repeated that 1,000 times. He said, while hugging a tree in the forest, while a storm came over. It was like the craziest story.
20 grams.
And of wet mushrooms.
20 grams.
I believe he says the equivalent of 20 grams. No, I think he did say the equivalent of like. He basically he did what you did.
Yeah.
He had a bag and he didn't really know.
Right.
And he took the bag.
Yeah.
And he read a bit about mushrooms. He knew a bit about mushrooms. So when he was on that tree, he was just like,
Crazy.
all right, what'd you read? Oh, you got to set an intention. Okay, what's your intention? Oh, you got the stutter. Okay, what do we do?
Yeah.
So he claims that after that one night, he never stuttered again. Before that, he couldn't get through his sentence. And ever since then, he got into the world of mushrooms. He got very fascinated with it, and psychedelics led him into medicinal mushrooms. So that led him on a journey to doing a whole bunch of things, from finding out how important mushrooms are to our forests, to finding out how important or how mushrooms can be used to like fight pests like ants and termites.
Can I cut you off for 1 second? One thing that's really interesting that you might find really interesting, he hugged the tree while he's tripping and felt connected to the earth.
Right,
through
like
the
a
tree.
pole, yeah.
Yeah, like he felt like he was directly connected to the tree when this happened. It was just
His
like
home base.
a weird thing.
And he also discovered quite recently that it can help save the bee populations. So I don't know how much you know about the whole bee crisis, but if we lose our bees, we lose which they're affected by all these different types of viruses. Then we lose like 30% of our food biodiversity, which will be very sad because then we won't have all this delicious food. And then also it has other side effects on nature, which is important too. So Paul figured out like, hey, when you take bees out of nature, you take them away from their sources of whatever it is that they like to have, and one of those things are mushrooms. And when they eat, like, I think it's like I can't remember which mushroom. I want to say agaricon, but I think it's amadou and turkey tail hold properties that help with the immune systems of bees. So it completely reverses all the problems that they're facing today. Their wing degeneration, the varroa mite. They tested this in labs. He got patents all over the world. He got published in Nature a year and a half ago, and he's rolling this out right now. So he's about to allow people to basically get for free a bee feeder where it comes with the mushroom solution, and it's like a maze the bees go through to get to the stuff so other stuff doesn't get to it. And bees are good at mazes. And he's basically giving, like, he has right now like 10,000 that he can give away for free, but he's trying to get funding to give away more for free once he's all over the world. He wants 1 billion of them around the world to help save all the wild bees. Paul Stamets. So he has some very fascinating stories he worked for the BioShield program for the U.S. government, and he did some very interesting things while working there, and that also gave him a lot of resources to further his own studies.
Where are you going with this?
I'm basically done, but I thought it was just very interesting that he knows much about mushrooms and about medicinal mushrooms, and that he actually doesn't know about Paul Stamets. So I thought I'd pique his interest until I was waiting for him to write it down, and then I was going to stop.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow. You were just filibustering until he wrote it down. You're like, I got all day, buddy.
But he did it.
That's really funny. You start pulling out like your, cooking book, and you're just reading page 1.
I have his book here, actually.
Yeah, they're over there. So he has like 4 books. He discovered 4 different psychedelic mushrooms himself, and he named all of them. And one of them, I don't remember the name of it, but it basically like is the strongest psychedelic mushroom. It paralyzes you for 4 hours. So he has some funny stories about that as well.
Has he taken that?
I don't remember if he took it, but he has a story where his friend took it.
That'd be very.
I'm sure he has.
I would be very, very. I wouldn't like that at all.
He has, and he also, I think, I don't know if he created, but he talks about making blue juice, which is basically, I can't remember how to make it, but you can put mushrooms with honey or something, something, and that ingredient will absorb the active ingredient in the mushroom, the psilocybin. And you'll be able to like basically just feast on that mead and get high off it. So you can take it to places like Burning Man without being noticed. Oh, it's ice. You put like mushrooms with like ice, and then the ice absorbs the psilocybin, and then it turns into a blue liquid, and then you can take that wherever you like.
Well, we don't suggest you take it anywhere.
You don't do that. You don't do that. You can do that. But, so
you know what? I have a question for you because I've seen your relationship with your son. I remember he was even on the podcast when we were doing our podcast. Yeah. When he's older, of course, would you want him to participate in using psychedelics,
or would you at least be open with him about the whole thing?
Both. I would say one of the things that I appreciate about my life, which there was no intention or plan to make this happen, but I didn't do any. I didn't really get into any psychedelics or any other drugs until I was over 25. That was a pure accident and just a lucky thing, and it's something that I didn't plan on having it that way, but I think it was a good thing. And so I would say for my son, I want to delay as much as humanly possible him experimenting with psychedelic medicine, but I also know that that's depending on his cultural, his peer group and what he's into, that may or may not be possible for me to do that. So I think it's really important to have like open and honest conversations about it. He definitely, he's going to grow up in a house, hopefully that doesn't, that he's not going to pick up stigma when it comes to psychedelics or other plant medicines. But I think, the more delayed that can take, the more delay in his development that psychedelics are introduced, probably the better for him.
Yeah, I was going to say, because after 25, that's when your frontal cortex is fully developed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, is that why you chose 25?
Yeah. Yeah, like that's basically the from what little I've read, it's like that's, after that, you're on your own, kid. Your brain's it's not gonna get any better. So
you're now like, and your bones are finished growing at that age. Like you're actually finished growing like past 25.
So I've did psychedelics when I was 14 years old, and I would never like recommend psychedelics for a 14-year-old or give psychedelics to a 14-year-old. But I can say that it definitely like. The experience I had was very like mind altering and mind opening, and without that journey, I think you said before that like mushrooms had a meaningful impact on your life, and they played a very important role to get you to where you are now. And I feel the same thing. And man, if I took them when I was 25, all those years, where would I be? I might be. We wouldn't
have been friends until you were 27, basically.
Yeah. So.
Because that's true. Actually, you know what? Because I've had the same thought process you've had. Is like after 25. Like even my girlfriend brought it up to me, and I was like, you should wait until you're after 25. Like if anything, I'm like, I don't even know if you should do it, but like if anything, wait till that point. And then when you say that, it's so true because. Like you you had a lot of issues. You had problems
Yeah.
with like people and stuff, and like you took that and it probably like helped so much.
Confidence, leadership skills.
Yeah.
Just being. My parents used to be worried about me just because I had no interests. They're like, try baseball. I'm like, yeah. They're like, try this other thing. I'm like, yeah. They're like, what do you want to do? I'm like, nothing. Like, play video games. They're like, and like today that's a super viable career, but but back then it really wasn't. So yeah.
It probably helped you a lot. So for some, like I won't say the kids should do it, but like some kids it could actually really help.
If you look at tribes and stuff, like it's kind of like the rite of passage. They take their teens and they have a big ceremony and they're like, do this, and it sort of clicks your brain. But you know, the society we live in, the stigma we have, and also the knowledge we have, like you guys are just talking about, you know, how our brains are developing. So is it good for mushrooms to intervene in a developing brain, or is it bad for mushrooms to intervene in a developing brain? Like for weed, it's probably bad. Weed creates anxiety. Weed can definitely do, you know, more harm than good sometimes. So we kind of have some like answers there. You don't want to fuck with a developing brain and like be smoking all the time. But with mushrooms, it's kind of in its own category. Like we were talking about medicinal mushrooms and how they give you this clarity and this mental focus that you might get from psychedelics, but without the psychedelics part. So you'd obviously have no problem sharing legal mushrooms with your son.
No, and so, not at all. Yeah.
So that just becomes an interesting sort of line of conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that I think that there's to be said there from you know, from your perspective. I think, you know, I never want to tell anybody that they shouldn't do something. You know, like if you feel like, oh, this is what you should do, and you feel like, hey, this is, you know, it'd be very hypocritical for me to be like, well, don't follow your intuition, you know, follow the law or follow the rules that the society has set out for you. At the same time, when I look at my own son and I'm like, you know, like if he comes to me and, you know, maybe at 13 or 14 or even younger, and there's some sort of thing that mushrooms could cure and it'd be important, and, you know, we talk to doctors and they're like, yeah, like this is going to be helpful for you, or there's enough evidence to say that should be done, sort of like, you know, that how seizure cannabis is being used to treat seizures, for example, in younger children. So in those situations, of course,
there's even microdosing. If you don't want to warp your mind, you can just
totally
microdose.
Yeah, I'd still wait for some more data on that one, but
of course.
I'm open.
Yeah, when it comes to kids,
when it's something to kids, it's like, it's one of those things that people just don't have a sense of humor about it, and this, it's, if there's one thing that's going to get people's you know, stigma tentacles firing up, it's any mention of, you know, children. And people are obviously, policymakers use that in a way to help with the propaganda too, right? With, you know, oh, keep it out of the hands of children and all that kind of stuff. So
it's true. I got it because I've mentioned it like twice already on the show, but I got to see what tribe that is. There's a tribe, they make their kids take psilocybin at 6 years old.
I just wanted to add that, like, you know,
crazy is that? You're
like, oh, this is going to affect, you know, a developing brain. But like, what isn't going to affect your kid's developing brain? Are you going to like put them in a room with white walls and just be like, I don't want anything to affect your developing brain?
Not at all. But that would affect them. That would affect them.
That would affect them. Right?
But like,
that's just it. Everything affects your developing brain.
Everything affects the developing brain.
We're thinking psilocybin is like iffy because it's legal. It's illegal. No, but like you give them lion's mane, no problem.
To me, the line isn't legal or illegal.
Okay.
It's I don't. That's not. As much as everyone should follow the law, I don't feel like that's something that really drives my my perspective on this issue as much. It's more about the development. It's more about like, you know, hey, if in 20 years they've done some long-term studies and they're like, yeah, actually, it's super helpful. Everyone should. We'll put it in the water supply. Then, then that's cool. Right. It isn't about legal or illegal. Yeah, it's just more like, hey, you know, it is a.
It's unknown.
It's unknown, and it does bring your mind to places that
it's your baby, it's your kid.
It's my kid.
You just don't want to do that to your kid,
nah,
because you're just like, what? Like even me, like I've had conversations with people, and I'm like, because I don't like the idea of like my kid being born and they're like putting like needles into them, like certain like vaccines and stuff. And when I was talking to my buddy, I'm like, how do you do that? Because I knew he had the same mindset as me. He's like, once you have them, man, he's like, you just want them to be safe. He's like, it's just like we just want them to be safe. He's like, so you might feel that way about like psychedelics or whatever, but it's like once it comes to your kid, you're like, nah.
You're on the defense.
Let's not.
You're a parent.
Let's not do that to the kid. You know, because everything affects them, but you don't want, like, everything will affect the pond of their mind, but you don't want to be throwing stones in there all the time just for no reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely don't want to get experimental with it.
Yeah.
So
it's such a weird play. That is a weird conversation.
To switch gears.
Why, you don't want to talk about kids doing mushrooms anymore? That's weird. You guys are odd.
I was wondering what your most challenging experience was and what it was like and what you got out of it.
That's a good one. Why do you ask that one all the time?
I want to tell. There's two. There's two experiences. I'll tell the first one first because it's just interesting. So the first time I ever like went on a bad trip where I'd lost my mind, I had been partying for a couple of days and I'd taken some amphetamines and some mushrooms at a party. And so I was awake for hours and hours, and the mushrooms would not go away. And I was freaking out, and the walls were melting and everything was happening. And I was watching My Cousin Vinny on TV, and like the judge's eyes were like bulging out, and you know, the typical bad trip happening. And I was just like, I can't do this. And so I called my friend Dave, who was always like the more experienced psychonaut of the group, and he was like, okay, I'll be right over. Amazing. And he comes over and he starts laughing at me, and he just starts poking at me and laughing at me, and I'm like, Tony, this is serious, man. This is serious. And he there was a bowl of salsa, and I remember he made a little smiley face, happy face in this bowl of red salsa, and he starts putting it in my face like, hey, is that scary? How about that? And eventually he broke through, right? Eventually he broke through, and I was just like, oh man, this isn't anything. Nothing's happening. Everything's fine. Yeah. I'm going to sleep eventually, and I'll wake up and it'll be okay. And so that was a good, just in general, when it comes to any kind of plant medicine or any kind of recreational substances, that was a great learning experience to be like, oh, it's going to go away.
We'll get through this.
That's perfect. Yeah, Mike said that a few times. That's like what you tell yourself, he said, right? That's going to go away eventually.
We're almost out of the woods.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. The second one, which I think is maybe even more recent, obviously, it was like this one where we went to this overnight establishment, and we did the ceremony that I talked about. And what happened was I felt like I couldn't tell what up was. Like my experience of the trip was like, I didn't know. I was like, am I going to just fall off the side of the earth here? Because I couldn't figure out like where up was. Yeah. And so I thought, well, if I don't know where up is, then I must be just not connected to reality anymore. Like I'm about to just fall off of the plane of Earth or whatever, right?
Like if I can't recognize up, I'm just gonna go up.
Exactly. Gravity is required. Gravity needs me to tell it what's up before it knows how to do it. So and I was like, and I remember looking outside, and I thought to myself, I'm like, do I need an ambulance?
Jesus.
Because I was like that place, right?
I know that place.
And I was like, and then this voice was like, no, you are your own shaman. You are your own guide. You can talk yourself back from this.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, right. Let's try that.
Wow.
And then I learned, and I was like, and that was when I realized that all through any psychedelic experience where I've been led, and I'd had people, shamans and other people have done like real leading ceremonies, and then I realized that I didn't need them. That those people, as blessed as they are and as helpful as they can be, like I didn't need that. I didn't require that level of supervision. Like I'm an adult, I can supervise myself, even when I'm like going, I alter reality. There's something that's still me in there anchoring this shit and making sure that I come home safe.
Definitely.
And that was a big one. That was a big lesson.
Yeah, that is good to always recognize that you at the core of everything are in control.
Yeah.
And not just in control, but the controller.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I've been through that before.
Have you? You hit the core?
Yeah,
the core, you know, lollipop.
I'm always like scared going into a trip. Like it's not scared, just like anxious. You don't know exactly what to expect. Like, but you do know what to expect, and that's like the fear.
Yeah, this guy gets so scared. He gets scared.
Like before a trip, it's like and he has to like really push me to do it. Like,
Really?
Yeah, because I'm like because like I go pretty deep when we do usually like 7+ grams when we do it. So
he'll be like half. I'll be like, no, all of it. Now we have to drink it.
Yeah.
We have to drink.
I'm like that guy, like throwing it behind his shoulder.
I'm like, all of it, now. I'm like, because you're gonna get high, you're not gonna be able to do it. It's all of it.
But yeah, once I'm like in a trip, I'm able to do kind of a lot of what you were just talking about. Just sort of be like, okay, here we are. This is familiar. You know that like we're gonna go on some tangents in your mind, but we're always gonna come back, and it's gonna be okay because you've been here before. So that's definitely been something that I've learned the hard way as well.
That I never had that thought with psilocybin, but when I had my ayahuasca journey, that helped me. Like I was very nervous. I'm not usually nervous with psychedelics, but this was like a whole thing. There was like guides and like this whole thing like set up. So I was very much like, ooh, Jesus. And like they made it like a lot of reverence. They were very much shaman like. And I was very scared. And I was just like, it's gonna be over. I'm like, it'll be fine. I'm gonna do it and it'll be over. I'm not gonna die. I'm like, these guys aren't gonna die. I'm like, nobody's gonna die here. I'm like, what am I doing? And then I was fine after that. But yeah, beforehand I got very anxious. Very anxious.
Have you ever had a guide for any of your trips?
Yeah, I did this one experience where the guide he combined mushrooms and LSD. So you took about a 0.5 or between 0.5 and 0.75 grams of mushrooms and about a quarter tab of acid. And then he did it. Then everyone was setting intentions, and he went around and, worked with everybody. And it was really interesting. I mean, it was funny because his thing is like, when you combine acid and mushrooms, if you don't have enough food in your body, you don't have enough nourishment, then the acid won't work. In his experience, he's like, you need to have a little bit of something in your stomach or else the acid won't have anything to work with. And then he's like, on the opposite with the mushrooms, if you eat too much, then obviously with such a low dose, it's not going to have that impact.
Interesting.
Wow.
So it was kind of a thing where I was fasting the whole day, and I was like, okay, let's go. And then he came in at the last minute and was like, hey, if you've been fasting, you should eat something because da 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 da. And I think most of us ate a little bit too much. So when we did get into the ceremony, it was like kind of low energy for a while. Like there were some people there that were like, they were kind of like skeptical, like, is this actually going to be working? And there's this guy like with a drum and a foxtail and, all these little instruments. And, there's sort of like that,
the ritual,
the skeptical kind of like North American person's like, I don't know about that stuff.
Yeah.
And, but eventually he came around and gave people more. And it really was, it was a very interesting experience. Like I think that the LSD aspect of it like allowed my brain to work really fast and solve problems. And so like, well, whatever the mushrooms were bringing up, like lesson wise or to understand or whatever, it was like my brain was just going like click, click, click. Oh, this. Okay, that. Yep. Okay, this. So it was a really interesting combination.
Huh. I love that combination. I've done that so many times.
I've never done that.
It's absolute. I was actually, as he was saying it, I'm like, this guy should do it. I'm like, you should be trying that at least once because it's actually really, really.
I'd be on fire.
It's so funny you say that because I used to do that. I'd be on the way to work. It was like a long thing, but like I would get to like this pizza place and I'd be really hungry from the LSD and I would eat pizza and then it would kick in even more as I was walking like to the place I needed to be. And that was like a thing. Like as soon as I got to that place, I'm like, I need to eat pizza. And like it was weird. I'd get really hungry, like oddly hungry. And then I would eat the pizza and also flying. And I'd sit at a ravine and listen to Steve Jobs' commencement speech. That's what I would do every day.
Wow.
It was the best. It made me think about death. And it made me like click in with death, that it's coming and like you should be really happy with what you're doing in life. Because if you're not, death might be a horrible thing for you.
So,
you want to talk about that?
if you had to, what would you say to your parents to try to convince them to do mushrooms?
I mean, I would just tell them like, hey, this is good for you. That's it. I wouldn't. I'd just be like, yo, this is good. Because if we're at a point in time where they're open to the conversation, that's the biggest thing anyway. Like I think, my parents are, we've had like so many fights about cannabis and everything, all of the things, right? And so it's interesting to see them, come along. And my dad actually, we started a company together, and that's what we're doing. We're working particularly with, helping cannabis companies scale. So he's had to like go through this whole process of like,
weed?
He doesn't smoke weed. He doesn't drink, isn't any of that stuff. But the whole process is like letting other people be. It's okay for other people. Like that's his process. Is like it's okay for other people. It's okay for him to be involved in a business context. Like that kind of growth.
He's not breaking the law.
He's not breaking any laws and things like that. So I think that over time, whether he may or may not decide that he wants to go a little bit deeper on his own journey with some of this stuff, and if he is, I'll just tell him, hey man, mushrooms will help for you.
I'd like to know, how were your parents, or if they even know, but how were they around any kind of substance use? Because I know Guyanese people don't play around.
They don't play.
Irish people do not play around. Not at all with stuff like that.
No, I mean, it's funny because my parents were pretty strict, but then nothing ever happened, right? There was no consequences. So like, as much as they would get all like up in arms, like nothing ever would happen to me. I'd never be punished or anything. So like my mom would kind of be like, oh, your eyes are funny. How come they're funny? And I'd be like, I don't know, I'm just tired. And she's like, okay, I guess so. And and I knew that she knew.
Caribbean mom,
like I knew
eyes, she could see it from so
exactly
far away.
Right. And so I knew that she knew, but she kind of didn't want to. It was like one of those things that was, as long as it wasn't like in their face, I didn't really get too much trouble from them. It was just more like we'd have these conversations about like society and laws and things like that, and I would get really upset, talking about the war on drugs and all of that, and they would kind of come back to like, well, it's illegal, so government wouldn't do it unless there would be some good reasons for that. So, but yeah, I think my parents were pretty cool. I think they wish I didn't take many drugs and just didn't do all that stuff.
They know about it all now?
They know more. Yeah. Over the years, like more and more came out.
Okay.
And I'm, trying to keep it pretty open with them, but yeah, they were pretty cool overall, even though they didn't agree with it. They kind of like didn't get in the way too much either.
They see you're not like a horrible person, so they're like,
yeah,
I think he's okay.
Yeah.
What would you say to like a stranger, like just someone who has never done mushrooms before, who is kind of thinking about it?
I mean,
Let's take your parents out of the equation.
Yeah. It's not what you think. It's not what you think it is. It really is not. It is not just for fun and folly. It's not just for having a good time. It's like this is something that could really help you. This is something that could really benefit your life and where it's going, and so you should just give it a shot under the right circumstances, the right setting. Definitely give it a shot. Try it out.
I love how you give your parents a short version of that. You don't want to get into it.
Well, they're always, you always have these like fantasies, like maybe I'll just put a little something in the Christmas cake this year, and then like no, that's not cool.
In the Christmas cake.
In the Christmas cake.
Bro, not if you have a bunch of Guyanese family members. I wouldn't suggest it. That could go.
I'll just tell them. I'll be like, "Yo, someone put too much rum in the cake this year. What do you want from me?"
That's true. Yeah. If you tell them it's rum, they might be like, "Okay, fine." His rum is Spike.
Yeah. I feel funny.
Man, that's nuts. What else you got going on, Mike?
I was just wondering, like, what your last trip was.
Mm-hmm. It was this summer. We had a bunch of friends. We went to a cottage, and we did a whole intention ceremony. And the mushrooms were weak. They were so weak. But it was because it was one of those things. I was like, all right, you know what? It's summer. It was my first weekend away from my son and my wife since he was born. So I was like, all right, let's do this.
I like the go-to, yeah.
Let's do this. And then the stuff was pretty weak. But again, it's still helpful.
Yes.
It's still like I got what I needed. I didn't necessarily get what I wanted.
Right.
But it was still,
Maybe a lesson from that is like, don't go in with expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's like these aren't fun anymore. This isn't your
serious time. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So yeah,
man, that's. Can you just walk us through what an intention ceremony is like?
Sure. So we do it kind of informally in the group of friends that I hang out with, and everyone just sort of goes around, and what we do is everyone chooses their dose, what they're going to take. And, we get that sorted out beforehand so that when everyone sits down in the circle, that everyone has their medicine with them. They know what they're going to take. And if there's tea being made, it's already being made and everything's kind of readily set out. And then everyone just goes around and just says literally like what they want to achieve from this ceremony, from this sit with the mushrooms. Like, what are they looking? Is it something, maybe it could be, I want to have a good time. I want to be playful, or, I want to dive into something about my dad, or I want to better understand my career or better understand my love life. And then everyone is in support of everyone's intention. So if the three of us are sitting around and you're, Colin's like, oh, I really want to talk about my career and get into that, this sitting. So then I'm like going to be holding space for that for you. Yeah. And being aware, being kind of intuitively connected to like, oh, how's it going? Or maybe it might be after, or might ask you a question after, but we're all doing it together. So it's not just our own intention, but we're collectively helping each other with whatever we're working on.
That's cool. I like that. It's like you're all helping each other, like foster that intention.
Yeah, and then everyone becomes kind of like the guide, and everyone becomes there's no real leader in that sense. There's no need to have like someone in charge. It just becomes a bunch of mature people who know each other and trust each other and know how to listen and know how to hold space for one another.
Wow, these guys take mushrooms and become adults.
It sounds like you've done
never
it
become adults when we do it.
It sounds like you've done that a few times. Does it ever get like distracting? Like, because you do a trip, and if you know everyone else's intention in the room, that I feel like that could take away from your own intention potentially. I know that maybe you're all holding space at one time or another, but I feel like that differs from like, it all being your space.
I don't think that's for me. I can't speak for other people, but I don't find that to be the case. I actually find that so much of my learning on trips is by helping other people learn what they need to learn. And somehow it always just interestingly happens where I'm helping them unlock something for themselves. And in that process of me, there's always something that like I'm either judging that person or they remind me of someone else that they judge. And so for me to just have to listen and be like, yo, Colin, like I just want to, I'm here for you, bro. Like, what do you want to talk about kind of thing? That the space it takes me to get into that space is my lesson in that situation. And so it's like an overlapping unlocking thing that happens when everyone does it together. And it's not like we're, like we did this at this cottage, and so we had a music station over here, and we had an art station over here, and people were kind of flowing and doing their thing. So it's not like we're like every 5 minutes going like, oh, how's that thing with your dad? It's just that when that intention is set in the beginning, and when everyone's kind of into it and involved in this intention ceremony. So it's not like, oh, there's like two people doing this ceremony and then other people are just over here. It's like it really becomes like a community thing, and then everyone does find space for themselves and what they need inside of the community.
That's right. So smart.
I guess I could, on the other side of the coin, it is distracting when people aren't doing mushrooms when you are. And you're like, oh, why isn't that person on like sort of my level? And and are they looking at me? Like, what's going on? Yeah. So anything can be distracting and anything can be helpful.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've had that exact same experience myself a bunch. Like you help somebody, and like as you're helping them, they're saying some internal thing that's actually in you, and all of a sudden they become the mirror.
Yes.
And now you're working out your thing with them, and like, it's cool.
Oh, so that's what it was. I couldn't. You told me not to change a light bulb anymore, and then you're like, you know what? I don't need these cigarettes. If he doesn't need to change that light bulb, I don't need these cigarettes.
Well, see,
and I
like-
never changed a light bulb again.
Like, look-
and you never had another cigarette.
Yeah, and look at that. He's talking about a time where I quit smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
And
So
I literally he walked up to me and said, "Hey, help me fix this." And like now that you're saying that, I can look at it in this light. It wasn't happening at that time because I was so shocked that you were saying it to me. But
Say what I said. Like, tell him how I came up to you and like exactly.
Mike came to me in a bit of a sweat, and he was very, very startled. He was just like, "You gonna help me fix this light bulb upstairs?"
What?
I'm like, "What? No." I'm like, "You don't need to do that. That's not a thing that you need to do right now."
Right.
And he was just looking. He's like, "Okay." I'm like, "Yeah, you don't need to do that. That's not what you need to do right now."
And he's someone I trust when I'm tripping. I just listen to him.
And like, yeah, now that you say that, because that was the night I quit smoking cigarettes, that could be applied to me, because that is the realization I came to. I'm like, I don't need these. You
don't need that.
Like, I don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was my mirror. He came up to me like a maniac.
The trip that I told you guys about with the guide with the LSD and the mushrooms thing, it's a perfect example of this in action. Okay, so there at one point nobody wanted to kind of get involved, and so we were sitting around in a circle inside of like a converted barn, and everybody kind of started to bleed out into the out of the circle, and like one guy was playing a guitar over here, and one guy's doing this, and so there's kind of like the group sort of energy is now in individual conversations, 1-on-1, 2-on-2 kind of thing. And but what happened was the guide was realizing, like, hey, there's something kind of missing in the group dynamic. We need to kind of figure out a way to bring this stuff back together. And so he created a little game where we each wrote down like we each wrote down something that we thought somebody else in the group needed to hear during their experience. And we folded it on a little piece of paper, and we put it in the middle of the room, and everyone else mixed it all up, and then everyone goes and picks one of the things from so that it opens up like, oh, who wrote this, who wrote that.
Anyway, and it's not directed towards anyone.
No,
it's just like things that people need to hear.
Things that people need to
But
hear.
everyone gets to hear it.
Exactly. So it's like you have to make it somewhat vague enough that it applies to other people, but it's like specific enough that it's something that you feel like they will actually need to hear. And it was really, really cool because all of the breakthroughs that were happening, all the little breakthroughs that people were achieving, they were all kind of rippling around, and they were, there would be like a group of 3 people that would be connecting, and then the next day we realized that those 3 people all got, Colin wrote a message for me, and I read it, and then I wrote a message for Mike, and you read it, and there was all the 3 of us kind of connected out of this little game, right? Wow. And at one point there was this strong kind of intuitive message that I received, which is I had this little crystal, and it would say, go give that crystal to that girl across the room. And I was like, who said that? And then the same kind of feeling of like voice or feeling was like, do it. Go. It's like urging me on, like, go give her that thing. And I was like, all right, I don't know why I'm doing this, but okay, here we go. And go over and I hand it to her. And 6 hours later, it's still in her hand. She hasn't let it go in 6 hours. And her breakthrough, what she wanted to achieve was to be able to let go of something in her past, like something that was really holding on to her tightly, and she wanted to like move past it. And so she was like, her intention was like to let this thing go. And she was the last person that the shaman was working with. We'd all kind of had our big haha moments, and we were all just chilling at this point. But she was like, stubborn about like her lesson in a way. Like she knew she wanted it, but wasn't willing to really let it go. And at some point he just looked at her and he's like, you just need to let it go. You just need to open your hand and let it go. And I had no idea that she still had this crystal in her hand. And so she opens it up, and that's the thing, that she was holding on, and it's a representation of what she was actually dealing with. So that's where I feel like when you get groups like that happening, right, it does feel like everyone gets what they need. Throughout the experience.
Amazing. Yeah. I've heard other similar stories where like one guy had like a message for each person that he was just downloading and then sharing, and stuff that he couldn't have possibly like info he couldn't have possibly had. And it was in a group setting much similar to what you were talking about.
Here's your front. That's the front of the mic. There you go.
All right.
I'm going to hear you more now.
Yeah. Okay.
Man.
So.
That's crazy. that you've been in a bunch of situations like that as well with your like trips that you go on.
Yeah, but we've never done like mushrooms.
Of course,
we've done rapé.
Yeah.
Which is some interesting plant medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
goes well with mushrooms.
How do you
I wouldn't
guys?
know.
Yeah, true. But like, how do you guys feel after those? I've never done anything like that really. How do you guys come out?
It's
feeling?
pretty amazing. Like the whole thing is curated. So Zark Fatah runs the Alive experiences, and Mike Bursick runs the Mastermind Adventures, and I've been on both. And you go and you basically, they have it all curated for you. So you have a bunch of activities planned that push your limits in different ways. You might go surfing, you might go ATVing, you might go ziplining, these different things, and then there's space that's created to teach each other things. So if there's a professional in the group, they might be asked to in advance prepare a little workshop for people. So they bring their expertise and their self-help people or just people from different walks of life that have something to share. And then on top of that, they bring in professionals from that they've curated that can add to your experience. So sometimes they're plant medicine healers, or they're just self-help people, different types of people. So yeah, you generally come out of those trips like pretty rejuvenated. You've just been in like a nice tropical place, and the beach and the sun and beautiful people, and then you've opened up and you've directly been asked like, what are your problems, what are your intentions for this trip? It's very much kind of like a mushroom trip, and it's and it sounds right because you're out of your own element, and doing so many new things with new souls. So yeah, you come out of it feeling open, and like you've accomplished something, and that you've made new friends and networks, and you just feel good. You feel really good.
What about you?
In terms of the rapé?
No, in terms of the rapé, just in terms of like when you have these like gatherings like this, these unique little experiences, like how do you come away feeling? Like even aside from the psilocybin, like how do you?
I mean, I feel like reconnected to something that is important to me, and I feel like being reminded about my not just my connection to other people and to myself and to the earth. Like it just leaves me reminded of something, reminded of the importance of what this is.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if that thing was community that you're like being reminded of through that.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah, I mean, yes, it is definitely that. It's also my path. Like it's a reminder of where I am on that journey. Yeah. And so it's interesting because it's more community in the focus of it, but it's more personal in terms of what I take away from it.
That's really cool because I've never done anything like either of you guys have done, and it makes me wonder about the benefits of like psilocybin or psychedelic use in groups. Because like I don't know, I've never heard that before. It's pretty cool. You need to bring some psychedelics to your next excursion.
I always try.
Allegedly.
I'm curious about more about your microdosing, to hear more about your microdosing experience. You said you've gone on some stints. I've done some microdosing myself. Paul Stamets actually recommends like a specific stack. So do you know Fadiman as well?
No.
So he's another guy that recommends like a specific. Those are like the two guys.
Okay.
That like recommend like a specific way of microdosing.
Okay.
Fadiman?
Yeah, Fadiman was one of the. What's his first name? Like, I don't even want to say it because I don't remember. But
yeah, I don't.
Always on Jeopardy. Always go for the last name because you don't have to say the first name.
Right. There
you don't have to.
That's a hot tip. If you're gonna listen to any podcast. But yeah, I'd like to hear about like what you've got out of it, long term, short term. Tell me some stuff.
I felt like when I sometimes I felt before I did this cycle, I did like 3 or 4 cycles of like maybe like 10 days each, and before that I really felt like I'd have to like force myself to work. at times. I'd have to like really like make myself work.
Right.
And there was some sort of like inner conflict within me about like working and not working, or playing versus working. And so I really found like I knew I had very ambitious goals and big dreams for my life, both in terms of service and in terms of business and all of that. And I just felt like I don't think I need to struggle this hard. It doesn't need to feel such a struggle. Like if I
want to work,
if I love what I do, why is it feeling hard? And so the what I used the microdose for was to actually help me in my work. And so I would mix it, grind it up and mix it with some coffee in the morning, and just noticed how there was less friction, there was less resistance to working.
Totally, I get the exact same thing when I microdose.
So do I, yeah. Which is weird for me because it's hard for me to like get started and stuff.
Yeah,
when I microdose, it's like right with it right away.
Yeah, I guinea pigged myself for a while for the last 4 years. So I did like there was a year where like I did a lot of mushroom like hero doses, and before it was like once a year, and then it was always to like check my ego, check myself. It was a once a year thing, and then there was this year where I'm just like, it was like every
We were witches.
month. Yeah,
Witches.
we're going down the rabbit hole pretty much, and it was different friends and different experiences, and that was a very interesting year. And the year after that, I was like, okay, you've done like a lot. Maybe we got to take like an extended like kind of break, and I decided to basically microdose for a full year straight, where I did like 4 days on, 3 days off every week, and I like regimented that. And I noticed like throughout that year, like I was super productive at my work, like on point, wanting to hustle every day, energy. This is great. So then I'm like, well, maybe it's a placebo. So, maybe whatever. So the next year I did no mushrooms, no hero doses, no medium doses, no microdoses.
So he says
for a year. Maybe I threw in a hero dose, but I wasn't microdosing for the whole year. I stopped, right?
True.
Maybe closer to the end of the year. Maybe there was like a 10-month instead of a full year, whatever you want to. But I did check it out.
Did you?
Yeah, it was at least it was like an 8 or 10 month like full hiatus. But then I still wasn't microdosing, and that's the experiment.
Because like we had like a thing, I was like, "There's no year where you stopped," and he's like, "I did."
Paul Stamets was on Joe Rogan a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how he recently started looking more into microdosing, and how he thinks it's actually has much like larger benefits than doing a hero dose. He's like, it's great to have like this like whack in your face, perspective shifting, mind altering journey, and there's lots to be said about that. But not everyone has the time for that. Not everyone wants to do that, and not everyone can download that much information at once. Like look back to our first experiences. Yeah, it was just like, what just happened? Yeah, it's interesting. I'll look more. So, but not everyone is as fascinated, right? So, so he's talking about how microdosing could help people with depression long term, and or help people with their work or whatever, or have all these same benefits, but without the hallucinating and the crazy journeys that are very intense.
Quick question: have you ever had a pass with depression at all?
Yeah.
And through the psilocybin, large doses, microdosing, have you found any lessening with that?
Yeah. I would say I can't say it's just mushrooms that did it, but I would say with a couple of different mushroom trips and microdosing and some LSD, larger trips, that my sort of depression just went away. Like,
I read an article recently that it's like I read an article that says LSD and magic mushrooms, depression shrivels up like certain parts of your brain, and when you do mushrooms and have a hero dose or whatever, it rejuvenates those parts. So maybe that's something that's happening there. I have no idea.
It has to be. I feel like it has to be. Like as soon as you said that, it made perfect sense, because it was like parts of my brain were shriveled up, because I had intense depression. That's why I ask. And yeah, it had to be something. So how long did you see? Like, how long did it take for that to go away? Was it years or?
Yeah, I mean, it was over time, because to be clear, that my depression was very sporadic, and it wasn't intense. Like it wasn't always intense, but it was like present from the time I was an adolescent until I was like, you know, into my 30s, and I would have like a couple of days a year or times a year where it would just hit me. And so I think it took a lot of like life adjustments as well. So that's the thing too. I noticed that what's really kind of my thing, you know, that my kind of thing that I carry is more anxiety really than depression. And what I found was that when I wasn't listening to the triggers and the messages that were around anxiety, eventually it would actually burn out. I would feel burnt out, and that would lead to feelings of depression. So it was through the medicines that I got to see that it's actually, you know, that I need to manage my anxiety a bit better, and that I can actually manage a lot of my anxiety through the thoughts that I'm thinking or not thinking. And so I think that's really what helped me shift. So I started, you know, doing lifestyle shifts as well, but being able to see that like I wasn't actually sad. Like I wasn't actually depressed. There was no real depression. There was just this intense energy that if I didn't deal with it would lead me to, you know, to burning out completely and feeling like very, very sad and very, very dark.
So like this is like an anxious energy that you had to work out?
Yeah. Like,
because right now you're like a mirror for me. Like this is something I need to.
It would be like the anxiety that comes from not being able to shut my brain off and always having like something else to think about, or like, you know, I have like one of my triggers or my challenges points is like Fridays and Sundays, because if I'm working Monday to Friday is like that transitioning from work to weekend, from work to what not work, I find like really hard, really challenging. Yeah. And then going on Sunday to Monday, similar as well, going from switching back from sort of weekend mode into work mode. I find those 2 points of the week very, very challenging. And so and I realize it's about it's anxious thoughts and not being able to control, not being able to feel like what's going to happen next, and how to like be, and, you know, kind of being able to like bring myself down from being high or being excited or being into stuff, and be able to like pull myself back.
And you adjusted that through just like adjusting things in your life.
Yeah. So I would do like the microdose, or I would do a hero dose of something, and I would be like, I would get like another piece of the puzzle would come in, another clue would be revealed. And then, yeah, I've definitely noticed the last 3 to 4 years, like I've not felt that depression stuff has not really come back.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because now I know, I'm like, oh, you're getting anxious, you're going to burn out. So you need to like dial back something, or increase more self-care, or, you know, look at your nutrition. So I'm more aware of the kind of things as they're happening.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So yeah, we were talking about microdosing.
Yeah.
And I was telling you about how my year of non-microdosing was basically like, it was super hard to get myself to work, and it was much more down, and I wasn't like as excited to get up out of my bed and onto my computer in the mornings, and it was just and I noticed that. So just whether I did a hero dose or not that year, it doesn't really affect.
Where were you?
That was when I was living with Jeff.
And you felt like it was hard for you to work at that time?
There was a period that it was very difficult to get some stuff done. So
really?
Yeah. So there was a period where I was like on point, and then it was.
You felt like it was lacking.
Yeah, and then afterwards, when I stopped doing it, I felt like again, it was a test I was doing. I'm like, I'm gonna microdose for a year, and then I'm gonna I can't just be the raw. Oh, I'm doing mushrooms, it works so well. Like, you got to do some sort of test on yourself to be like, okay, I actually know the difference. I'm not just like a crazy person. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be responsible, and I'm gonna see what it's like for a year, 4 days on, 4 days off, no hero doses, and then I'm gonna see what it's like without doing mushrooms, and see where my head goes for a year. Like, and you know, it's not like it's not something you're addicted to. It's just something that it's like medicine, right?
I'm just shocked that you had a point where you felt like you weren't, like, it was hard for you to work.
So
like, I've never seen that.
So adding to the story, I'm leading into now. I didn't continue microdosing forever. I you know, had a interesting last few years, and I didn't keep on a microdosing regimen since that year. it was kind of like an on and off thing, sporadic thing, which is not really the way to do it. So recently, after getting into the topic of mushrooms again and getting really into it, I'm like, man, I got to start like microdosing on a regimen again. And so I actually do what Paul Stamets recommends. And they're currently doing trials on the studies on the stack. He recommends like 0.1 or 0.2 of psilocybin, 2 grams of lion's mane, and 0.2 of like niacin. Niacin's B3, gives you like a flush. So what it's doing is it's pushing the blood to the ends of your capillaries, and that's where like nerve growth happens. So lion's mane has nerve support, helps auditory visual nerves, and with strengthening connections between your brain cells. When you take the niacin with that, it enhances those compounds that are giving you those effects. Supposedly,
Wrestlers use niacin.
No
wrestlers
way.
use niacin.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
For what reason?
So professional wrestlers, right? WWE wrestlers.
Yeah.
A friend
Not
of
like children.
a friend of mine.
The only other person who wrestles.
A friend of mine. No, not like Olympic. Not like Iowa State wrestling.
Not like WWE wrestling. We're talking wrestling.
Wrestling.
Okay.
No, so yeah. So
Okay.
but my friend of mine, he does like wrestling in like one of these kind of like amateur WWE kind of things, right?
Okay. Cool.
So he gets glass broken on him and people break. There was the one thing they had fans bring your own weapons event, so people brought like watermelons and cheese graters and anything goes kind of thing.
Graters.
Yeah, but he said niacin is what they will take right before they go out because it pumps up the blood and it makes their all that blood come to the surface. So yeah,
Have you tried it?
I have. It makes you hot.
Woo.
Makes you hot. It makes you hot on the inside.
Yeah.
That's horrible. And then they get smacked. Can you imagine feeling that flushing and somebody smacks you in the chest?
So I've been on a serious regimen for the last like few months.
Really?
I've been microdosing what I just described to you.
And wrestling.
4 days on, 3 days off. And you kind of get used to it. You kind of get used to the niacin flush. You don't take it as like, this is bad anymore. You're like, oh, here it comes, like whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little more intense than other times. Like when I tested out the niacin first, so it comes in like 500 milligram capsules. Not like, so that's like 5 grams.
Yeah.
Or not 5 grams, 500 milligram capsules. I microdose it at 20 milligrams, basically. So I tried a 500 milligram capsule because that's what it comes in. I'm like, well, people do this, not a problem, right?
Yeah.
Take one, and like for 2 hours, I'm like hot and red and flushing. I'm like, oh my God, in my bed, like just naked, like scratching my whole body.
It's not like a recreational drug. It's not something you want to do just to get high.
Well, again, so microdosing isn't meant to be fun. It's meant for work. So
the
with
visual of Mike naked, all red, scratching in his bed.
just beat red and just loving it because it's so good to scratch.
He's like, oh, what I do for psychedelics. Oh God.
Yeah, afterwards you're in the zone. So with a microdose of niacin, it lasts like 15-20 minutes. You feel that peak, you feel the tinglies, you feel hot, and then it kind of just goes away. And then you're just you're microdosing.
True.
So and then the lion's mane is great for what I just described.
Yeah.
And anyway, so since then I've been like insanely motivated when I go to work. Like it just like I'm ready every morning. I have all the energy, and it's a huge contrast to from just before I was microdosing a few months ago, where I was like not wanting to get out of bed. When I sat at my computer, I'm like, what am I doing here right now? And then I'd walk around the house a few times, and it was really hard to get any work done in any individual day. I wouldn't get enough work done. And that's just changed. So microdosing.
Were you getting enough work done and just not enough for your scope?
I just wasn't motivated.
Because I know, because this guy does a lot of work. He'll just sit and work all day. So we're like doing a regular person's workload, and you're like, that's not enough.
No, that's the thing. So
I put on
I'll usually be hard on myself, and I'll be like, man, you're not getting enough done. And then I'll like look back at my last few weeks and be like, oh, you didn't really take any weekends, and you work like 10, 12 or more hours a day.
Right.
And like, sure, you've been lazy and like,
for your standards,
whatever it is. Yeah. And then so I'll always have to think back and be like, man, you're working harder than like everybody else. You got nothing to worry about that. So anyways, it wasn't that.
No,
it wasn't. It was like literally I wasn't like able to lift a finger on my keyboard. It was just like, and when I was, it just like I'd get tired immediately. Like it's just what you were describing. Like why this is what I like enjoy doing. This is what I want to do. This is in line with my goals. What the fuck is going on right now? And I feel like microdosing really made a difference there. And there's like you can see a direct contrast between like before I did it and then when I started doing it. I'm like, this is different. So
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Have you ever checked your blood?
No.
Check your blood.
I mean, like I have in the past, like I've given blood and they tell me how it's doing.
I'm always like so scared of my friends say stuff like that because like I had that same thing and it just turned out I was anemic.
Like super tired, lethargic, all that stuff.
Like not motivated. It's usually like anemia.
It could have been something else. The only difference wasn't psychedelics. I started doing turkey tail and chaga and agarikon and like mixing those in with my regiment. So like, who knows? I'm one man. I can't.
Well, it's interesting because I think that for me, what I've noticed isn't that the microdosing of or the plant medicine isn't necessarily the thing that heals anything. For me, it's more like it gives me an awareness of what's going on,
right?
And so it helps me. So like when I did the microdose on sort of the productivity tip on it, it was like reminding me, the messages I got throughout those days were like, hey, you all work pretty hard most of the time, so you got to give yourself a little bit of a break here. You know, like if you feel like you're tired, it's probably because you're tired. You know, like if you feel like you need to rest, it's probably because you need to. So I feel like that's what the microdosing does for me. It just helps me understand what I need, what I really need to accomplish that particular goal.
For me, a hero dose is the one that gives me the answers, and then like you put the work in after. From the microdose perspective, I feel like I'm not downloading so much information. I'm more just like doing. But that's interesting that you say that.
Yeah, that's not. I feel like I've always said like I feel like an emotional evolution from my stint of microdosing. Like I just felt like I was able to be more open with my girlfriend and my friends about how I feel and being vulnerable and finding strength in that. That was like a big lesson that microdose taught me, like finding strength and vulnerability and stuff like that, and letting that be your sword.
Yeah,
almost, you know. So,
are you microdosing right now?
No, I need to do those things.
Yeah, where I sit now on it is like it's good to do, you know, a couple quarters a year and then take some time off and switch it up a little bit. It's maybe not something you do all the time. You don't want to depend on it either.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, I do this for work. That's not a good place to be.
Yeah.
I've never. In terms of microdosing, because I never heard anybody say that with psilocybin so much. Usually cannabis with that.
Speaking of work, I want to get to the point where I can like do a hero dose, but like my tools are such a familiar extension to me, like my creative tools, that I can like operate them like, you know.
Well, you can.
You know, so like I can like use Adobe Illustrator, I do 3D sculpting, use ZBrush, and see like I know the tool so well that I don't even have to think about it, so that I can like press these buttons. But I don't know how possible that is.
You can do that.
I don't even know. I feel like it's more like for painters. Like you can use a paintbrush, but you can't use a keyboard.
I know how to help you do that because I do that. I'm always on the computer.
Yeah, I don't want to touch a computer.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think you just need to try it.
So it becomes overwhelming because it's like you look at my house and there's a lot of stuff around, right? But you look at my computer and there's a lot of stuff, and like I see that stuff like a room, and like I don't want to be in that room.
Right. Yeah.
You know what? Maybe this might help.
Too much.
Because I am very much a planner on my trips. Maybe you should just
open the program.
Yeah, leave the program up, and not only just leave it up, but like have a thing that you're gonna work on. Not just like stuff, but like actually have like I'm gonna make this thing and like try it.
It's possible.
But then you got to do that like
there's lots of buttons and there's lots involved. There's lots of things that can go wrong.
I have no interest in technology when I'm taking mushrooms. I'm not like I want to like write things. I want to like it's all analog. I have no interest in getting into technology.
I get into both. Like I was very much like that, and then as I started getting exposed to him and Adobe and everything, I started like just like really going over to that and like literally just sitting down. The only thing that ever stumped me is I was on a lot of LSD once and I tried to use After Effects and it just didn't work out. The program turned into a whale and I got stuck and I was just staring at it for like 3 hours.
That sounds about right.
Like I just couldn't do anything. I was like, this is too big of a problem and I don't have
It's a whale of a problem.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know. I was thinking of you too. And I'm like, I don't know how he does this. I'm like, this is too much.
I don't do that.
Much. I'm like, how does he know? Like, period. I'm like, how does he know how to use this program? I'm like, this is so weird. I'm like, this is too much. But now I do it. You just got it's repetition sometimes.
You practice, you learn new things every day.
But also, I don't know how good it is to do that. And you'd have to turn off all your notifications on your computer.
I do that sober now. There's no dings or whistles or beeps or bops. None of that. Not interested.
I feel like you got that in spades. I feel like you're someone that's like that. You turn off all the notifications.
I like to do when I'm not working. I like to turn all my notifications off
and just be present with what you're doing, family or whatever.
Yeah, I mean it's. I think the interruptions are really awful for productive work. They don't really help at all. But at the same time, I do work with clients, so I have to be responsive. But
true.
That
is true.
But I do find turning off notifications, and I never click on anyone's bell on YouTube to remind me instantly when they've dropped a video. I'm like, no thanks, I don't need to know that.
I did that with like so many accounts, and now I'm like regretting it. So
oh my god, because it was like, oh my god, all right,
turn it
there
off
it is again.
one by one now.
You can go to your subscription every day and see what's new. You don't need to be told. Yeah,
exactly.
Cool. Wow, so much stuff to talk about.
Intentions. What do you touched on intentions more so than anybody ever has, more so than even we have. What about like set and setting? What do you usually do for that? Like, how do you set that up usually?
I'm pretty. I mean, I'm sometimes I can like just walk around downtown and I'll be okay, and I won't need a setting really. I'll just kind of just set my own intention and internally kind of just as long as it's a nice sunny day or whatever, that's my setting, right? If it's a nice outside, that's my setting. It can get more elaborate, like if we're a group of people, and usually when there are more women around, they're bringing the frilly stuff and the napkins and the silk and everything, like like women just, and my friend group anyway, they tend to be the ones to bring that kind of stuff out. But so it's nice, it's lovely, it does add something. Of course, it does bring something out of it too. But I'm kind of like DIY when it comes to set and setting, like whatever's there, whatever's around, as long as it's good people, or if I'm by myself, okay, I'm good usually.
Cool. So you're more like a mindset person. That's like the best thing, or the most thing that you concentrate on, like your mindset going into it.
Yeah, it's more like I'm at the point now where I'm pretty confident with my mindset in most situations. So, but with mushrooms, I just find like, outside is important. Sunshine, like that kind of, that's my set. That's when I get the most out of it, the most out of the experience.
I saw a scale. It was like 0.1 to 0.5 mushrooms is like a microdose, or like 0.1 to 0.3 or whatever, and then 0.5 is like a creative dose, and then like 2 to 4 grams is like nature walk, sunny day, and I'm assuming that's what you're doing when you do these walks. And then it's like 5 plus hero dose, and then but not 5 plus, it's like 5 to 12 hero dose, and then it's like 12 to 28, which I've never seen on a scale before. 12 to 28 god dose, and I'm like, oh wow, we haven't like done that really.
Yeah. I've touched on it.
You can come close to it, but that's the you
you
actually used that phrase before, god, like a god dose.
Yeah, you noticed that too, right?
I was gonna mention this scale because it made me think of it, but I don't think any of us have been there.
I touched 14, but like I don't know. I don't call it God. I don't think anything I do is godly.
I definitely have been to the point where I've done mushrooms, and if I didn't know better, I'd felt like God was like going through my brain, my veins, basically, like absorbing the universe. And it was like, oh my God, this powerful being, like, what is this? And if I was in a different mindset, I would have been like, oh, well, like clearly that's God. And that's where my head's at now. But it was just, the universe communicating.
You ever had an experience like that? Because that's like kind of mystical what he's talking about, feeling like God's present.
Yeah, I find that more easily accessed through cannabis, that kind of experience.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be, you know, my cannabis is more my jam in terms of like regular plant medicine, and it takes me pretty far.
Are you doing large doses?
Not necessarily. No, like you know, I like even like let's say like a 0.4 or 0.5.
It's like a
one paper joint, maybe 2 paper joints sometimes, but yeah, I tend to, you know, first thing in the morning, if I smoke and then I meditate right after that, like I'm gone.
Oh, it's so
like
good.
so gone. And yeah.
I don't know if we asked, but have you ever had like a hero dose? Like a full-on ego death, let's call it.
Yeah, but again, it's funny. I feel like I don't take as much as you're supposed to get those experiences.
Right.
So I feel like I'm not sure if I have or not.
Okay.
For me, it felt like it.
Well, like you would know. Like, have you felt?
Yeah. Like
have you felt your ego completely dissolve and not recognized who you were, and then felt an overwhelming feeling of oneness and connection with everything in nature, like literally the whole universe is you.
The problem with that is that I feel that on a daily basis without medicine, so that's hard to it's hard to say. But yeah, because I
you feel your ego dissolve on a daily basis.
Yeah,
okay.
like I've
just making sure.
I've trained myself through meditation to be able to almost flip it on and off like a switch.
Okay.
You know who also
that makes sense.
Says that is Darren Austin Hall. He was telling me that exact same experience. He's like, I just go there through meditation. Mm-hmm. I think even Chris, you know Chris, obviously. Mm-hmm. They talk about that, like almost like a Kundalini experience, I guess we can say. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I really want to get to that point because I've heard so many people talk about, like, they're like, no, I've done mushrooms and I've done this and it's the same. And I'm like, are you sure? They're like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I've heard that too. For sure. Meditation is very powerful if you get into it.
You know, like where the ego death, as it were, is for me, I think it's accessible by people. It's accessible through consciousness. It's just who you are, right? It's who we are. We're both, you know, that one person and then everything else. So I think that there's different ways to access it, but nonetheless, like I have taken, you know, a pretty, like the day I couldn't tell what was up, you know, I would say that for me was a ego death or God dose or whatever you want to put it, but I only took 2.5 grams or 3 grams. Sure. So, but I think it definitely, everyone has a different level of tolerance, and what would be, you know, a big dose for somebody is, you know, very small for somebody else.
Yeah, and also you can't really measure the active ingredient in what you're taking. So
Correct.
You're just taking a bunch of mushrooms.
Correct.
Like you said, you had to set up your intention. You had all your buddies, you did your ceremony. It was a week mushroom trip.
Yeah.
But they all should have just did 5 grams. That's what you guys should have done. You guys should have all just went hero dose. Like, guys, everybody's doing a hero dose now. Everybody just starts eating. That'd be crazy.
Oh my God. Well,
man,
that was fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very odd episode. It's been 1 hour and 42 minutes, but it feels like it was longer. Maybe it's because I'm sober this time. I'm usually high in these interviews.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, sober this time. It just happened with the right person, I guess.
Thank you so much, Nick. Do you have anything that you're plugging? Any
breath? People should breathe a lot.
Okay. Do you have like breath work classes?
Nope.
No. Okay.
I just think that people should breathe a lot more. And next time you're on a nice psychedelic experience, spend some time just really focusing on what your breath feels like and how you can expand the trip or even reduce the trip using just your breath.
Wow.
Awesome. Well, you've been listening to Talking Mush.
That was amazing, Nick. No plugs. What a gangster.
Plug breathing.
Yeah,
that's a plug
for the people. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Peace.
You've been listening to Unreal Johnson, Mycadelic, Unreal Johnson.
He said it. Oh, he said it. Oh my gosh.
Coliseps Cummings.
I'm making shirts.
Coliseps.
Coliseps.
All right.
Peace.
See you later.